Okay, everyone, welcome to episode 10 of the Pyramid Pod. Well, with me today, I have Brian. Why don't you start by just give me a little bit of intro on yourself and how you got started with Take the Present and just your whole your journey so far.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Braden. Good and finally meeting you. My journey, fun story. Someone asked me that literally 2 days ago. It's like prepping me for this question, right? They asked me, how did you get to this higher state of consciousness or higher level of awareness? And I thought about it and I was like, well, there's multiple answers to that, right? There's like the multiple levels to the answer, right? On the highest level, it really feels like it is almost my calling, like my destiny. Like I was like I incarnated in this reality to do this. This is my role to play. Right. So it feels like this is all in the making for a long time. And I've been just kind of remembering waking up to it. Right. That's the kind of the highest level. On the more practical answer for a lot of people when they're kind of wondering, how do I start my journey? My journey, if we just forget the sudden awakening, whatever you call it, the practical steps I took to kind of go on forth on my journey, learn things, expand my awareness, it really did start with meditation, mindfulness, I will say. I mean, I did get into conspiracy theories early on, chakras, metaphysical stuff, philosophy, psychology, stuff like that. Very cool stuff. But at that point of my journey, I got into that first. I wasn't necessarily working on myself, right? I was still very sad, depressed, numb, had a lot of cycles, had a lot of pattern. I was just learning new things, which is great. But I didn't go through any kind of, working on myself yet. Until maybe a year into my journey, I stumbled upon meditation, mindfulness. I thought it was a simple concept, whatever, right? But as I start meditating, I do like 7 days of calm. It's an app on the App Store, which I would not buy the paid version, by the way. But anyway, it's an app on the App Store, and I learned 7 days of meditation. And by the seventh day, I just got this feeling of what it really meant to be still. And once I felt that, I started to realize throughout the day that I am not still at all. I'm not at a place of peace at all. In fact, throughout the day, I'm doing so many things unconsciously. I'm on the phone. I'm walking in a circle and I'm asking myself, why am I walking in a circle? This doesn't help my reception. This doesn't make my signal any better. Why am I doing this? And I started to realize, like, I'm not choosing to do this consciously. I think this is like I think I'm anxious. I think I'm afraid. I think I'm unconsciously doing this out of a place of fear. Right. So I started to kind of wake up in a different way, wake up where I realize I'm living my life from a place of fear in so many ways, suppressing fear, suppressing emotions, suppressing myself. I started to realize, wow, every time I go out around my roommates, I just change who I am. I'm not even my real self. I'm hiding who I am. I'm learning all this cool stuff and I'm hiding it from everybody. I'm ashamed. I think it's crazy, whatever. Right. So I realized all these patterns. And as I start to realize them and notice them, I also started to kind of learn ways to break them. Right. It's kind of funny. I was a software developer at this time in college. So just kind of applying that same kind of mentality, I was actually able to start to understand what parts of these patterns were like core parts of them, like themes that are shared between all these patterns, and how to actually work through them. Right. So I'm just learning, and I'm stumbling upon other meditation, mindfulness practices and stuff, and I'm kind of taking things um, in a very synchronistic way. I feel like certain things came into my life to show me stuff, right? But over time, it's almost like I'm going through this invisible training program where I'm learning how to work through subconscious patterns from like a very technical perspective, like a software developer, a very, objective way in which anybody can do it. And it really seemed like that was my destiny in a way, right? So I kept doing this. I kept learning. I got really good at it. Surprisingly, I didn't expect to get really good. I just got so good at breaking patterns. I was just started helping others just for fun. I didn't expect to be some kind of coach or anything. I was just helping my friends. I thought they were struggling, right? A lot of people around me are struggling with the same things I was struggling with. So let's help each other, right? And I just started helping people in general. And I'm just learning a lot, helping people. And I actually grew really quickly from this. And you'd be surprised just how fast you can grow from helping others. You probably see the same, like the kind of person you become when you try to help others is truly incredible, right? So I'm just going on my journey in this way. And then after a while, I'm learning all these patterns and I'm like, maybe I'll just share it on social media. So I start to take the present Twitter. Right. And I started sharing it. Some people actually invite me into like some kind of promotion group. I'm like, I don't even have a Twitter. I mean, I guess I'll try. We'll see what happens. And I get in for a while. It's kind of weird at first. Some people, big accounts, they kind of do this trading retweet stuff. And I'm like, after a while, I'm like, this is kind of weird. But in the meantime, though, I do find out that a lot of people actually like this stuff, right? Like I don't have that many friends in person yet who talk about conscious stuff, spiritual stuff. But these people online, they're like, wow, they really like this stuff. They seem to benefit. And I just keep going. That's like my maybe junior year of college, sophomore year of college, maybe. And that's when Take the Present started. I was just a fun thing on the side. It was not even a role. That was just a Twitter and a Tumblr. You know, some people who know me know the Tumblr days. It's kind of funny. It wasn't a website or anything yet. Nothing professional. Um, yeah, I just keep going. I'll go through my shadow work period. A lot of people see about that on Twitter. And I do confront a lot of parts of myself. I realize all of the ways my childhood traumas, or all the ways I suppressed it and programmed to myself. And of course, I'm deprogramming more and more. I get really good at deprogramming. I can deprogram like one pattern a week. At one point, I'm deprogramming one pattern a week, and I'm just like trying to study for finals and crying through childhood trauma or some shit in the bathtub. Right? It's a really funny, like people. I saw a Vine or a TikTok. Someone's like their first month they're learning stuff, the second month they're crying, the third month they're learning stuff, fourth month they're crying again. It's funny. A lot of shadow work for me, a lot of synchronistic stuff. I start experiencing supernatural stuff as well. All these multidimensional beings, they visit me in dreams, they visit me in real life, tell me I'm on the right path, tell me to keep going. I'm like, okay, I just feel like I'm crazy. I'm gonna keep going. We'll see what happens. And it wasn't until I kind of finished my shadow work period, maybe after college, I reached a more grounded place where I'm able to communicate a lot of these ideas I'm saying now in a very concise way that anyone can understand. Right? Before, I just go through something and be like, I don't even know what to say. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what I know, but I just think I learned something. So it wasn't until maybe recently, maybe in the last 2 years, a year, you're seeing kind of the more finalized version of Take the Present and the Insight going on, where I'm at a point now where I can help people on their journey learn the skills to break patterns and live a lifestyle that's more conscious, multidimensional. And now that is my goal now, is not only to be a coach to help individuals, but also create a platform to where these resources and this knowledge and this experience can be accessible to anybody, you know, kind of like your platform as well. So yeah, that's where I am. That's what Take the Present is.
Yeah,
Yes.
it sounds like we had a similar timeline of like our lives, because I also I started Pyramid Realm my end of sophomore, start of junior year of college. And yeah, at that time I was not very grounded, you know, like
Mhm.
I felt like I had a message that I wanted to get out to the world, but it was definitely during that initial like conspiracy phase, you know.
Yeah.
Like most of my content is tailored to like a very niche crowd of like fellow conspiracy nuts. And at that time I also like I didn't used to be into all this or even spirituality or conspiracies or anything. And so me going through these changes internally and learning so much, I also ran into that like moment where you realize that your friends don't know the new you anymore, you know, like, and you're
Mhm.
kind of, you're trying to be yourself, but you're also like holding on to old programs because that's like how people know you. And and so yeah, you learned, or like I learned basically how to yeah, deprogram myself and also just stand in my truth, you know, and let everyone get to know me again. And I think that is like a really um, hard part of the journey, is like not just doing the inner work to change and to like really evolve into like what I call your higher self,
Mhm.
but also to like not fall back into old patterns and not yeah, to stay out of your comfort zone and to keep going. And yeah, I feel like I'm at a place now too where I'm trying to focus most of my content on, yeah, just useful, like insightful lessons that I've learned that have helped, I don't know, liberate my own self-expression. And yeah, I've also loved the whole experience of Twitter. Like I also joined and got invited to like some retweet groups, and I met some really cool people. And I do feel like sometimes I'm tired of social media, but I also I feel a community there. And so that's kind of why I've been doing this podcast, just trying to meet everyone in a more person on person format like this.
Yeah, I feel that. It's easy to kind of see people as numbers after a while. You get if you do your social media tasks and tweets every day, and I take some breaks to remember like there's some beautiful connections I'm making. People really actually cherish this content. It's not like a marketing job or anything. Like this is like every single thing can come from the heart. And I even started reaching out to people like you in a way, but just in connecting with people who are already like following my platform. Um, Actually you learn a lot as well connecting people, and it's kind of humbling as well to see even them ask you questions about things you went through and you answer it, and then you think about like damn, like you think back to times of your life you're struggling with that, and you really start to appreciate your platform more, not only because of what it helped for other people, but like all the stuff you put on your platform helped you. At the end of the day, it helped you the most, truthfully, right?
Like,
So
that's all I think anyone can really share, at least from a place of authenticity. I think the only things you can really share are things that have helped you in your own experiences. I think
mm,
when you try to, I don't know, sometimes we overgeneralize um, and I think there's also a lot of drive in social media sometimes to just focus on engagement and stuff.
no.
But I think the only thing that's really helpful, and at least like for me, when I feel like I'm the most aligned with my purpose here, it's when I'm sharing like lessons and messages from learned experiences and things that have helped me in the process of deprogramming. And I like what you said earlier about how you were in college doing software. And so you already kind of like had a background in programming and deprogramming. And
Hmm.
it's got to be kind of fascinating to view humans as something that we are programmed to a sense. And then, yeah, part of the process of awakening is definitely deprogramming from a lot of that.
Yeah, I agree. Especially because even when I create content, when sometimes you feel like you look at the tweet, like I'll open the Twitter drafts, whatever. You think of a tweet, you look through your drafts, and it doesn't really seem like something that is. It just feels like if you force it, then it doesn't seem like it's really you. It just seems like something you created in the past or something. But for me, I know when I'm creating the most content was when I'm growing the most. So for me, it's like, well, I'll put all my energy into growing, expanding, and breaking patterns. The content will come. If I break a pattern, I'll have some kind of epiphany, some kind of cool thing to say about what I learned, and I'll be able to share it. So for me, I'm never trying to force content. I'm just trying to learn and grow, and the content will come no matter what, right? And what was the other thing you're saying? You're saying, oh yeah,
Uh,
the programs. I'll talk about that a little bit, right? Because obviously humans are much more than robots, but it was interesting the way we program ourselves is very robotic actually. And the big thing, certain things, like for example in code, if you run one line of code, the code will run, period. It will achieve exactly what you wrote down, period. But is that thing you achieve what you actually want to achieve, right? And so I say this because a lot of times people try to do what's called like positive affirmations, right? And instead of understanding, it's like, so from a software developer's perspective, we have this pattern going. All this code is already running. It's like when you boot your computer up, you open Task Manager, you have all those things running already, right? You open Task Manager, you have all these processes already running. So what people don't realize is when they start the day, their programs are already running. Okay, and maybe they do the morning routine again, their phone scroll. I'm guilty of that too. Then their patterns start right away. They're already looking for some kind of validation, some kind of thing. They're trying to transfer it from their dream self to their physical self, whatever. Right. What people don't realize though is that when people would try to do positive affirmations, it's like you spam the exact same code multiple times. But the issue is never that the code wasn't working. The issue is that you have code that does the opposite of that already, right? So if you're trying to tell yourself, I am loved, that's cool. You definitely are. But the issue is not that you need to tell yourself that more and more. The issue is that on a daily basis, you are telling yourself you cannot be loved. And the solution here is to be mindful of the ways you're telling yourself you can't be loved. You already are inherently loved the way you are. So that's not the issue. You don't need to add more of that, right? So a lot of times people they try to fixate on adding. It's like spamming. It's like spamming in a button in a Mortal Kombat game, right? Instead of just spamming the same thought, let's be aware of the current thought pattern that is making us feel unloved in the first place. Right.
yeah,
So it's kind of a different approach, but It's just that simple kind of shift in thinking. You start to realize your thoughts are always running, and those thoughts are creating a lot of the patterns you suffer from. And you don't need to react to the thoughts automatically. Oh, I feel bad. I'm gonna say I feel good. I'm doing whatever. Just be present with it. You don't have to do anything, and you'll see the pattern, right? So just approaching it from that perspective. And me, no, at the time, no, not much experience in meditation and mindfulness. I was ready to already able to like solve a lot of subconscious patterns and thought patterns. Like, oh, well, obviously I don't need to say this I don't need to react like I'll watch myself go throughout the college or walking campus. I'm like, well, I'm judging some person's shoes, and I'm like, why did I do that? Right?
Yeah.
Like, why did I judge his shoes? I'm like, wait a second. Like, instead of trying to be like, what's okay, do whatever. Instead of reacting to it, I'm just watching myself. Like, I think I'm insecure about my shoes. Like, I think I am cool. I'm so insecure. I think I have cool shoes. I'm cooler.
Yeah.
I'm projecting my own insecurities of before I was cool in high school. I had no friends. I moved to Texas, whatever. And I'm projecting my sadness of that time period onto this guy. And obviously in that moment, I don't realize that right away. It's like, I don't just like have a great epiphany. But as I notice it throughout the day and throughout the week, whatever, I'm like, this reminds me of when I was blank. And I start to understand it. Right. So that is a big shift. That is the number one big shift, I would say, in thinking. Obviously, there's a lot we can talk about, but
Yeah.
people really react a lot.
I definitely feel that what you were saying about like not just spamming affirmations, but you also have to become aware of the negative thought patterns. And one thing that really helped me with that was my first few psychedelic experiences. You know, like I had a few trips towards the end of my college years where I really became fully aware of my own thought patterns, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and aware of like I'd have a thought and I'd think to myself like, is this a constructive thought? You know, is this making me how does this make me feel to believe this thought? Like to give this thought my energy, how does that make me feel? Both in terms of like self-judgment, right? Of like, oh, you're not doing enough, you're not enough. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you did this, you'd feel better. If you had this, you'd feel better. Like becoming aware of that and realizing that it's an endless loop because
Mm-hmm.
you can always have something more, you can always be this, you can always be that. And kind of snapping out of that to like a state of really being content with where I am in the process. And one thing about like being content with where you are in the process is it doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge the places that you have to grow. It's just like for me, this has been the thing I've been really trying to master. Is like I want to be fully content with where I am in the process while still being like extremely disciplined and driven to continue growing, you know, to not be comfortable, but to also not be constantly like shaming myself and disappointed
No,
in
yeah.
myself and like, oh, you should have done this by now, or you should have $10 million by now, or whatever it is, you know, just
No.
getting out of that mindset. And also what you were saying of like thought patterns that I became aware of is I think especially when I first went to college, like I would like judge people and tease people. Like if I saw someone wearing a dweeby shirt or something, I'd like, you know, I'd let them know, or I'd like, sometimes I'd say things that I think my intention was really just to make that person feel bad for whatever reason, you know, and I think everyone's done that at some point. And I kind of realized like, wow, like that is coming from a place of insecurity because like deep down that pattern that I think a lot of people are entrenched in is the idea that like someone else needs to feel worse for you to feel better. Like you need to belittle someone for your own ego basically to just like validate yourself. And so I really pulled a 180 my junior year, and I was living in like a frat house at the time, and everyone kind of teases me because I just kind of like went full 180 and was like
Mm-hmm.
suddenly a kind of a hippie mentality of like, hey, just be nice to everyone. Like everyone's trying their best. And it's it's crazy. how quickly you can change when you want to, you know, when you're driven on the growth process. How old are you now, by the way?
I'm 25.
Oh, nice. I'm 24, so I'm right behind you.
Yeah, I did. I know the 180 thing because it's funny. And so I did that right after high school. In high school, I was kind of known as like the school bully in a way, right? Like the Twitter bully. I would like just tweet stuff, make fun of people, whatever. And it was obviously a place of insecurity. I was very insecure, and I got this form of power that I felt like I could protect myself finally. I felt this very unprotected, invalid, vulnerable in my family life. And so that was this kind of illusion of power. And it really got to my head because I really just never felt like that. Right. So, and after high school, I just did a complete 180. I just tried to be kind of like hit like all positive. I'm just trying to be all positive. Right. So I'm learning all this stuff and I'm just trying to help people. I don't even know why. I'm just trying to be positive at all costs. Right. And now Twitter and whatever they talk about this is kind of what's positive vibes only. Right. So initially the 180 wasn't sustainable. It was almost a suppression of who I used to be,
Yeah.
right? And which is fine because temporarily it's definitely good for me to go on that 180 and actually be nice to people and learn stuff, right? But eventually, as I was on that did the 180, I learned the stuff, meditation stuff. I knew it was time for me eventually. I mean, I didn't actually know this. Looking back, I knew it was time for me to confront who I used to be before my journey, right? Because a big part of, even think about this, in high school, I was super gutsy, powerful. I was in football, sports, was very athletic, very driven, right? And when I suppressed that part of myself, I lost all the good qualities too. So
Yeah.
as I'm on my spiritual journey, I have this goal to help others and build this platform. I don't have the drive to do it. I don't have the gutsiness. I'm too afraid to even express myself, right? Because in high school, I wasn't afraid. I was just express myself and I was mean to people. And in college, I lost that part of myself, and I was just, they call it a savage or something. I was kind of like a savage in high school. I
Yeah.
lost that to just say something, and from like to be a savage in a place of love, to just say something, you know, it could trigger someone, but you know it's for their best interest anyway. That kind of energy to be able to do it at the times when it's necessary. I didn't have that. I was so scared to upset others still. And so until I could do that shadow work, until I could actually embrace that part of myself again and realize like, oh, I never wanted to make people hurt. It was always this innocent insecurity of I was just a scared child. Because I remember when I was bullied, when I first moved to Texas, I had no friends. And I was just trying to escape that.
Dude,
Right.
we had a very similar yeah, journey because I was also like, I guess what you could say somewhat of a savage. And um and yeah, it was the same experience. Like in
Yeah.
terms of looking back, I don't have a lot of judgment for myself. I really was just mostly innocent, and I liked making people laugh. And sometimes
Yeah.
if they laughed at someone else's expense, like I was willing to just, yeah, take that. But I also, yeah, I in that journey of like letting, yeah, okay, so in that journey of like pulling the 180,
Hmm.
I was the social chair of a fraternity at the time. I wasn't just like in a fraternity, like I was the party guy. Like I spent thousands of fraternity dollars every week throwing giant parties, making alcohol runs, setting up decorations, you know, and so then like to pull this 180 where I'm like all of a sudden I'm like, we should really be inclusive and kind to people that look different than us and act different than us and be understanding of where people are in their journey. Like it was kind of a shock to some of my friend group, and I definitely isolated myself and lost touch with that side of myself, you know, which was social and fun and able to connect with people. And so my journey had the same like looping back moment where I went from being kind of like really, I was maybe even overly spiritual, where I was like, everything
Yeah.
needs to be about multidimensional aliens and like manifesting heaven on earth and peace and love. Like everything needs to be about this. Like to then realizing I missed some aspects of who I used to be and all those positive qualities, you know, like not the judgment, not the teasing, but like
Hmm.
the social, you know, being able to connect with people. yeah, and the fearlessness, the bravery to say whatever I want, speak my mind, speak my truth, and like integrating that all together was definitely like a big part of my journey over the last 2 years to find like what patterns don't serve me, while reintegrating some of my old self that like is still in alignment with my mission and does serve me. And yeah, I think that's a beautiful part of the journey to kind of like, it's almost like you're fine tuning yourself, like we go up and down and up and down, and we slowly just like get closer to the truest expression of who we are.
Yeah, and I think it's so beautiful how the truest expression of ourselves is just all of ourselves. Like it was so weird for me to think because like I was never like a lot of the things, a lot of who I express myself now, a lot of the ways you would never have thought looking back, right? You ever watched Naruto before?
Yeah.
Do you finish Shippuden? You watched the
uh,
war?
I watched like a few episodes here and there. My roommates are super into it, but my cat is named Bijou after the.
um, okay, so the reason I bring that's funny. The reason I bring it up is because I won't spoil it too much for you. I guess I think it's a good show. You should watch it still. Actually, very very symbolic. But the 180 that Sasuke does is almost like the 180 I did, and people are like this guy was just like this guy was probably like people probably didn't like me at all. They probably hated me at some points. And now this guy is trying to help. He's like in fact in when I first started my journey to the 180, I was like trying to save the world. Like I used those exact phrase like we can save the world. We
Yeah.
need to save the world. And it was the funny 180 I did, but it's kind of funny that there's this duality where you think of yourself as I want to do this great thing to help others, and you envision who you are when you're going to do that. And when you first envision it, you don't think that the person who's going to do it is the part of you that you're most ashamed of, right? Like I wouldn't like when I think I'm going to help others and talk to them and inspire them and talk to a lot of different people. I would have never thought that the person who would do that is a scared child who is scared to order McDonald's, right? Scared to talk to the waiter or the cashier, right? So it's so funny when you do this kind of shadow work where you embrace all of you, which is the most authentic expression of you. The parts of yourself you're most ashamed of are actually some of the most powerful, beautiful parts of yourselves. It's really just this beautiful journey each time you uncover a new part of yourself. Like, wow, the part of myself I thought was a bully is exactly as you said. It actually, he really liked like make people laugh. Like I actually just realized I just liked making people laugh. That was just so fun to me. I didn't have that many friends in general before I became popular. So I just laughter is a cool way to make friends, and we're having a great time, and there's a lot of memories of laughter, right? So I realized all these innocent things, and then it's like you do this, you break the pattern, you get that part of yourself back to the surface, you integrate with it, and like you get all the positive, like for you, the social skills and stuff, right? But at the same time, you also get um this it's like your conscious awareness expand. It's like a doubles. It's like you're playing a video game and you like evolve into like from Charmander to Charmeleon or something, right? You expand, like your hit points double or something. It's crazy. Every time you break a pattern, you integrate it. You get like your consciousness just like becomes a bigger and bigger cloud.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I like your. I often think of life as like I don't know if this is healthy, but it sometimes it helps me just like push myself and keep trying to break these patterns. But I do think of life sometimes as like a giant video game, and we incarnate in here in our avatars, and as we deprogram and level up, like we unlock more of ourselves,
Mm,
and I agree with what you're saying of like I think there's some misconceptions in the spiritual community that lead to like people trying to embrace a certain image while suppressing other parts of themselves. Like this
mm,
is this is what it means to be a good spiritual person, and then anything that doesn't fit that image you end up suppressing, and really that doesn't make you happy at all. Like that will
yeah.
it's still all ego because you're focused on the image. And I think it's so beautiful to like truly truly accept and embrace all of who you are. And yeah, i I like that a lot. I think it's a good message. And I think for me, I kind of already talked about this, but one of the things that I stress the most on this whole journey is the importance of like being willing to forgive yourself really easily and not holding on to shame. You know, like don't shame yourself for things that you've messed up on. You know, take lessons as they come, but don't live in shame, and also be willing to forgive yourself and to, like what you're saying, look back and realize the innocence in the mistakes you made, you know, and what where you were truly coming from. And yeah, I think that has really helped me a lot in the last like 4 years. It's been pretty wild. And um yeah, I'm curious to hear more about your experiences. You said you had some multi-dimensional like dream time and also real life experiences. Do you want to elaborate on any of that?
Yeah, let's start with let's start for shock value first. Huh? Let me think. Um, so we'll just say some cool stuff. We'll go anywhere. So I just think about random questions people ask me. Someone asked me what happens in the afterlife, and I always tell them there is no afterlife, and that there's not afterlife. It's the life that was always here alongside this physical dimension. And when you die physically, you just awaken in this higher dimension that was always here. Now, some people can access that dimension while they're awake here, and that's what I've been able to do. Other people can do it too. Most people only do it in their dreams, right? It's almost like when you die, you enter your dream self. Your dream self is like the version of yourself beyond space and time. Sometimes you call that astral projection. It's kind of the same thing, fourth dimensional, right? It's this idea that you are expanded beyond 3D space time, right? Space and time are one thing. It's not two dimensions. Space time is a thing, right? 3D space time. So um saying all of that, so there's cool things you can do. One, in the fourth dimension, subconscious patterns are very, very, very easy to see clearly. Very, very easy. Okay, it's kind of like when you have a dream. Say you have a dream, you have a traumatic memory of you got abused in a room with a purple dinosaur, and there is the smell of bread. You could have a nightmare where this purple dinosaur made of bread is attacking you, right? And it's like it, the dream is like it's like quicker in a way, in quotations, quicker, but it's like a combination of a visual of all of those factors of that traumatic experience combined together, mushed together. So dreams are almost like really fast movies of 3D space time. It's like if it's like a movie is like a bunch of pictures really quick, right? Well, a dream is like a bunch of moments really quick. So when you can see life in the fourth dimensional way, they call this opening your third eye a lot of times, right? You can break pattern. You can see beyond patterns very, very quickly. Kind of like in dreams, you have this weird dream, all these different factors and stuff, and you can understand exactly the subconscious pattern. So that's the cool thing. One, I guess, cool thing I do is oftentimes in dreams, I will literally break my pattern in the dream. In the dream, it's like I'm meditating. I don't know, and I'm like I wake up in the dream. I know I'm awake, and I'm watching the dream go. And it's like I'm meditating and I'm watching it, being mindful, and I'm like, okay, I can see this and this. I can see how this dream will have this vision of football and something. I can tell this is a different time period. I can tell there's this fear here of blah blah blah. Then there's this dog gonna attack me, right? This because I was used to have fear of a dog attacking me, and I knew it was this fear of when my dog snipped at me once. It didn't actually bite me, but the fact that the dog that I trusted so much out of everyone in my family actually snapped at me, it scared me and almost traumatized me as a kid, right? And so in the dream, though, the dog, the animal, whatever it is, normally chases me and tries to bite me. This time in the dream, I knew I was awake and I let the dog bite me. And once the dog bit me, I realized it wasn't biting that hard. It wasn't even trying to hurt me. It was just scared, and I could see the trauma that my parents actually, my dad mainly inflicted on my dog from the kind of way he trained it. And then I almost like I felt my dog's pain, and then I forgave myself as well for the ways I treated my dog. So there's ways you can break your pattern in the dream. There are things people can do. There's magic stuff happening. Like if people are like they call it sex demons, right? People are trying to possess you. They want your validation. It's almost like a what they call it succubus or something. Some people have that kind of energy around them, kind of freaky. But there's a moment in dream where I was like being followed by one. I could actually like protect myself, and I deactivated it. And the person in my life who had that energy, they got triggered. It was kind of crazy. I did that. I protect myself in the dream. The next day, that person in real life, I don't know who it was, and then but in real life, a person who had the energy, they like got triggered, had some kind of weird life event right away, right? So there's a lot of weird stuff. I mean, in the fourth dimension, things happen. I'm just saying a lot of random stuff. In the fourth dimension, things happen already, and then they manifest in the third dimension, physical reality. So a lot of things that we're experiencing in physical reality are already happening in our dreams in our fourth dimension awareness. Okay. Now for the actual cool stuff that happens, I've seen some people who have passed. That's cool. I think one time this person, their friend died of suicide and they blamed themselves. And intuitively, that person, the friend who passed, came to me and they said they want to talk to the person because that person was grieving and very destructive. And that person's very close-minded. But so one time they said the time is now, they're ready. Like they can see beyond 3D space time. So they knew when the time was right. And they told me, you can tell them now. So I told them, their friend's trying to talk to you. They're blah, I forgot what I said. I just channeled some stuff, right? And that person got offended. Like, is this a joke? Like, are you trying to like trivialize my friend's death? And I kid you not, 2 or 3 days later, that person actually talks to their dead friend, and they're like, then they found closure. So that was a pretty cool thing. And the friend was like, you can let go. It wasn't your fault. Blah blah blah. Right? And that was really beautiful. Um, there are kind of missions you can go on. Let's say that. So, I remember I told you in the fourth dimension, things happen there, and then they manifest in 3D reality, right? So a lot of things that we struggle with on this planet, it's already happening in the fourth dimension. And there's ways in which you can enter a fourth dimensional state of awareness and create a greater impact on the world, right? The things that happen in the fourth dimension will probably affect millions of people at a time. So for example, there's a certain kind of pattern going on, certain kind of fear-based thing going on with people, multiple people in the world. If you can tune in, you can enter a kind of fourth dimensional state. You can use your dreamlike powers to create whatever reality and deprogram that pattern in the fourth dimension. It actually impacts multiple people at a time. I think you've kind of seen this effect where there are multiple people around you who mirror you, something you're going through. And whenever you break that pattern, they miraculously make progress too, like the next day. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
Right? It's because we're all connected in this fourth dimension and beyond. And so there's actually a lot of cool stuff you can do in that higher dimension. Of course, this is where psychics get their powers, clairvoyance. They can perceive beyond this 3D space time. I think the biggest thing, though, for a lot of people, I know this is a lot, it's kind of like shock value, but I think the most practical thing is that, I mean, a lot of religions talk about angels and stuff, but there really are beings who are here to help us. And we do not have the ability to communicate with them. We really don't. We are just like, we're like animals in a way. Like, I mean, the way humans view animals, like we're like unable to speak to them. So if you watch Interstellar, it's like, you watched Interstellar before?
Yeah, of course.
It's like when the father's in that fifth dimensional space and he can, or fourth dimensional space, you can see all the moments in that library, in that room.
Yeah.
And he's trying to talk to the daughter through poking at the strings and the stuff. That's kind of how multidimensional beings talk to you at first. They can't talk to you directly because honestly, we're too fear-based and closed-minded. We don't even notice. So they try to talk to you in subtle ways if you're listening. Sometimes it's through numerology, but that's not the only way. If it's only in numerology, it's kind of limiting. So there's a lot of different ways. But yeah, a lot of beings are here to help us. They're trying to help us wake up. And even right now, in this moment in life, I know a lot of things are going on this planet. People are stressed. They're confused. It is still, everything's still going along fine. But the main thing is that people need to stop being so afraid so that they can receive more help. Right now, if a multidimensional being was to appear in front of most people right now, they would freak out and think it's the end of the world and the world's some kind of whatever, right? They'd freak out about something or whatever. So right now, a lot of people are not even necessarily ready. And so that's why we get a lot of UFO sightings just kind of subtly, because the whole world's not ready to accept it yet. Most people, their entire worldview is based on the government is right. They're protecting us, aliens or whatever. We are the main power here, blah, blah, blah. Right. So just even seeing this new life would be disrupting to their entire worldview. So saying all this is why I'm starting with the kind of stuff I'm starting with is meditation, mindfulness, because I realized, I like conspiracy stuff too, like you. I realized that a lot of the change you're looking for, people are not even ready to accept yet. And they need to have something that's more stable and grounded for them to change within, to where they're less fear-based and they can accept new ideas like that.
It does. It requires a certain amount of emotional intelligence to be able to grasp these ideas without while being grounded. And yeah, I had a really cool experience my junior year of college, actually. I was like out at a lake with a few of my friends, and I walked away to go to the bathroom. And I remember like because I agree with you. There's like some divine, you want to call them angels, aliens. There's some divine beings that comparatively we are somewhat primitive. And I also agree that they try to communicate and help us through synchronicities and certain other things I've noticed in my life. But I remember walking to the bathroom and having this like almost this thought like planted in my head, like
Oh yeah.
look up. And I was like, and I like looked up and I saw this like perfect equilateral triangle UFO craft with like three kind of like luminescent, like not lights as we think of lights, but like three
No, yeah.
luminescent points on the corners of the triangle. And I remember like sitting there and watching that and just being in awe as it like flew across the skyline, like clearly not making any sounds, not like it felt like it was definitely not being affected by gravity through some technology. And I remember just being in awe. And that was like kind of a catalyst for me in understanding my purpose is I realized like because for me the experience was sheerly positive and beautiful.
Mhm.
And I was like,
You were
this
ready.
this is yeah, I was ready. I was
You
like,
were
this
ready.
is
You were no.
incredible.
They wanted you to see. They knew you're ready. They chose that moment. You were ready.
And I realized like I want like there's so much negativity and fear, especially in the conspiracy circles too, about certain topics such as disclosure and ETs and UFO crafts and all sorts of stuff like that. It's a field that I find personally like so satisfying and interesting. Like, and genuinely, I'm curious about it. I want to learn more. I want to know more. I want us to be uh, intergalactic civilization, you know, that is openly in contact with different beings. And I realize like I need to generate that same enthusiasm and like curiosity without fear so that we can open our minds collectively to this because we can't do it through fear or it will be I think that's
Yeah.
another reason why like in the ET discussion people are always like why don't they just like land here and do a press conference or something, you know. I think it's because they're smart and they know
No, yeah.
that it has to be a positive experience, which means we have to be ready to grasp.
That's so right. And think about this. What's the best way they can do that? Is they show up in human form. They incarnate or they project their consciousness and turn it into humans. And it speaks to people like you and me and many others who don't realize it. It's almost like that Avatar, the Blue Avatar movie, where they're like in those pods. It's kind of like that. Like I promise you, a lot of people when they die, they're gonna wake up in a ship out of their pod. They're like, oh, mission accomplished or something, right? Like that is you're exactly right, and you're exactly right that you saw UFO. Like so, I read this one time from some kind of channel or something, but a few times actually. But a lot of the UFOs, the technology is so advanced, they know who is watching them, and they choose who they want to see, them, because those people are ready to wake up, right? So you definitely were ready to wake up and start your journey, right? Same thing with me. When you said I got goosebumps, and I remembered when I saw these UFOs, it was crazy too. It was like 5 of them, and I got kind of a weird voice to look up to in the sky. I'm just driving home, and I just stare at, and then I just stare. I just park and I stare, and then it just zoom. I was like, "What is that?" And after once I see them, it's like they know I see them. They just zoom out of the sky really really quick, just out of sight. I'm like, "Holy what?" And I just started like getting freaked. I actually remember even one time I had a dream. I saw them. I had a dream that I saw like all these beautiful crafts and lights in the sky. And I remember in the dream I was crying because like I knew in my heart this was like the moment we've been waiting for, like where people were like, or at least a certain amount of people were ready for them to come. And I remember having this dream. It felt like it was the future or something. Like there's this beautiful moment. I couldn't stop crying how beautiful it was, how loved I felt. We are not just this limited primitive being. Truthfully, we are all multidimensional beings. And it's if we can wake up to that, it's great. Right. But yeah, you're definitely right. And a lot of people live fear-based lives. They're not ready for that big jump to alien life, or even to the idea that the government can't be trusted is already just a lot for them.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely interesting times. I'm enjoying my time on Earth a lot, and it's like I try to really keep a positive outlook through everything because I love this stuff, dude. Like, I love talking about ETs, and I love even talking about government. And that's another thing I'm really passionate about, though, is like not just talking about like why the government sucks so bad. Like, I'm passionate about talking about the next level of government. You know,
Yeah,
what could a more like futuristic, I'm tentative to say the word like utopian, but like a more
we'll go with it. We'll go with it.
abundant, peaceful government.
It's a utopia. It's a utopia,
Yes,
basically.
that's the vision that I started getting my like junior year in college, was like this new civilization where like people wouldn't be slaves to fear anymore, whether that's through the education system, with fearing failure, fearing hell, fearing like disappointment from your parents, just living in all this fear. And I just like saw this vision of people being freed from that and being able to like be who they are, you know, and to not worry about all like yeah, changing what it means to be human, what the human
Yeah.
experience is. And from those downloads I was like, I need to share this somewhere, you
Hey, you
know.
said
So
download. That's true. It's a download.
yeah, it is.
It's like you're downloading from like the collective cloud. It's like
Yeah,
this, and it's really, that's actually how psychics and to all that. That's how they get their divisions too. You're literally downloading, and it's like some people have a bad connection, so they can download a little bit, but it's they try. It's like a buffering YouTube video, and they
yeah.
get like glimpses. But and as you work through stuff, it's a better connection. It's kind of funny.
A- And one of the earliest, because I also got into consciousness through all this, it all happened at once. Like or at least it catalyzed at once, and then like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
layers and layers. But even through the UFO experience, I remember seeing the UFO and then looking around and realizing there were other people around me that weren't looking at the UFO. And it kind of hit me that like the eyes only see what the mind is prepared to comprehend. You know, we have all these um we have like a perception, right, that creates the reality that we see, you know, that we
No,
experience.
yeah.
And there's so much happening around us all the time that from literally like a survival standpoint, we filter out all sorts of stuff, you know, that we
Mm.
deem not relevant to our existence, you know, to the status quo, to living our lives, to yeah, we filter out all sorts of stuff. So if you're super close-minded to UFOs, you can literally have a UFO fly over your head and you won't even see it because your eyes, your brain will filter it out from the reality you experience because you don't believe it. You don't experience it. You're not ready to perceive it. And so from all this, like I also just got super into the study of consciousness, you know, and what it means to be conscious. And I don't really know where I was going with this whole rant, but yeah, I'm fascinated with expanding awareness and yeah, just um consciousness in general, like what it means to be conscious, what the next level of human consciousness is, what we're capable of. And yeah, yeah.
I know. I followed you. I think it was mainly. I think the utopia topic started, and then then there's this whole. You're just talking about how this new level of consciousness, this new reality, and then you're going on about ways the people are blocked from that. So it wasn't a rant. It made sense to me. Okay, I did take a little bit of notes. I did take two notes. I know we're going. We were talking about cool stuff. I don't want to forget. So one thing I want to say before I forget, I did write this down, is that utopia vision you had. Okay, this would be good for our viewers too. That vision of a certain utopia that doesn't make sense it seems illogical compared to what we experience now.
Yeah.
That is actually a sign of awakening. A
Yeah.
lot of people, when they first awaken, they will get a glimpse of utopia that seems impossible, but in their heart, they'll gradually attract to that utopia, and that'll actually start their journey. So that's actually a big thing, is when you get that first glimpse of this utopia you can't explain, even in childhood. I got that.
Mhm.
It's a sign of awakening. Okay, one. Two, I want to say that survival filtering is actually very important, right? So I want to elaborate even further on that. Obviously, psychologically, what you said is exactly true, but even when people think about manifestation and creating a reality, it's like, when people think about manifestation, it's like a delay. It's like I'm gonna order something and I'll get 3 to 5 business days, it'll come back, right? No, it's supposed to be, as you expand into a new reality, it's like immediate. It's like when you have a dream, the moment you think about something bad in that dream, whatever, that dream becomes a bad dream right away. You can make a dream go from good to just nightmare and right away, instantaneously. That is how instantaneous our ability is to create our reality. Only thing stopping us is our own limitations, right? Because in a way, imagine most people, they could be afraid to dream that quickly because they're afraid they'll create their own nightmare. So some people, they limit their own creation. So they create something slower, they can, in their mind, they can manage, right? But that filtering is exactly true. So think about, imagine that filtering concept you just said, but imagine the effects of it are immediate, and it affects every part of your life, not just UFOs. Just even I want a relationship, a romantic relationship, but I already have all these limitations as to who I need to be, what a relationship is, all this stuff. And right away, it's impossible for you to create that fulfilling relationship that you truly want inside, because you're already limiting yourself in your reality. Or even your job. You say you want this dream job, blah, blah, blah. But already you have these limitations of who you are, who you can be, what you actually enjoy, and the conditions you set that to where you have appreciated. Like a lot of people, they think, oh, I'll be happy when blank. You said that earlier, which is great. That is like the most common pattern, is the thought pattern is like, I will feel better when blank, right? A lot of people, they wait for this outcome. And even people don't realize, even if the outcome came, they wouldn't even appreciate it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't, they were trying to get that outcome to save them from something in the present. When they experience that outcome finally in the present, what they were avoiding in the present is still there in the present, and the suffering is still there, right? So this survival filtering is very important, not just in the impact on how it creates your reality in real time. Like there's no delay, like in manifestation, it's real time. But also for us to realize that these patterns we create are not bad. It's for survival. It's what we created in our childhood to protect ourselves from things that even adults around us couldn't understand. As children and as little kids, we're going through stuff. People don't understand what we're going through.
Yeah.
And we're protecting ourselves from those things, which is normal. Those patterns are good at the time period. Now they have evolved over time. And now that's why they call it like childhood abandonment issues, whatever. Now we're acting out childish. We're going through some romantic relationship, and then we get triggered. And now we're acting like a scared child, right? And so obviously it's good at the time period, but now in the present, it's holding us back. We don't need to act like scared children. We don't need to play these childish games of pushing people away to test if they like us or whatever. Right. So that's a survival thing is actually very important. You said all the stuff you said is spot on.
Okay. Two things from that. Okay. First of all, I remembered where I was going with the whole consciousness perception from the utopia thing. Because like it kind of goes back to what I call the 100th monkey effect. And because I also think of it as like downloading it from this conscious cloud, and somewhere in like the human consciousness, there exists like this vision of a more fulfilled humanity, like fulfilling our potential more, just like the next level of our evolution. And we're being guided to like take the steps to get there, like through the consciousness. And as more people, like, I don't know if you're aware of the 100th monkey effect, but it basically says that, like, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about how when you break through a pattern, like the close people in your life are able to somehow break through it as well. And so, yeah, I feel like that sometimes about that vision. Like we all like share this vision, and we're looking at it from like different angles, and we're being shown like our role in manifesting that shared vision. And then also the thing I wanted to talk about is because I'm in a relationship right now, and I just want to hear your perspective on relationships. And yeah, I've been following you, and I think you have a girlfriend, correct?
Yeah, I do. It's Vichim, owner of Indigo Beyond. You probably follow her
Yes,
too.
I think I follow her as well. And you guys seem like a lovely couple that like really has a lot of stuff figured out. So I want to just give you the floor for a second to kind of like talk about enlightened relationships and what you've learned in however long you two have been together, and how to keep it healthy and yeah, fun and fulfilling and respecting each other and sovereignty, and also like growing together, evolving together, just all that good stuff.
Okay, good, good. So yeah, someone I actually talked about this a few days ago. So it's like I was being prepped for this. So big thing though is so a lot of people they would see us, especially in real life, and they'd feel jealousy. Like, how do they have that? I want that, whatever, whatever. And and I was talking to Bantka the other day, and I was talking about how well, I think people when they get jealous of us, it's because they see it as we just got lucky. We just have good chemistry. We just happen to be perfect for each other. And although a lot of that is true, they don't realize a lot of the inner work we did. Right? A healthy relationship, a conscious relationship, we'll call it a conscious relationship,
Yeah.
is one in which you are consistently working through your patterns. Period. Okay, you don't have to work. You don't have to be amazing, fast paced like me. Even if you're gradually working through it. Reason being is that when you form a romantic relationship with someone, you will form emotional attachments pretty much every time. I'd be surprised if you didn't. Okay. And when you form those emotional attachments, what that means is that you're going to experience a form of love that is very beautiful, that you've probably never experienced before, or whatever. And you are probably going to use that form of love, or you're probably going to fixate on it and avoid a lot of your sadness and whatever you're hiding inside of yourself. So, and even furthermore, actually, let's actually even go back even a little bit more. A better way to look at this is when you experience a form of love, and especially if you feel safe and fulfilled, your wounded inner child will come out because it finally feels safe to do so. Okay, let's just start there. And so what happens is when your wounded inner child come out, that's when the fights start happening, whatever. That's when people start misinterpreting, misunderstanding, drawing conclusions, judging, controlling, all that stuff. It's that wounded child coming out. And so conscious relationship is not just when you're breaking patterns, but also you are understanding that both of you will have this inner child coming out, and you're creating space for each other to heal that inner child. So a lot of times it will call on me to be almost like a parent in a second while her inner child comes out, and to be the father that she didn't have. And the same thing for her. When my wounded inner child comes out, I'll feel like a scared child again or something, and she will support me. I mean, she doesn't have to, obviously, but if you want the relationship to go well, you obviously can do that. Right now, for me, fortunately for me, I was alone for a lot of my journey. Say fortunately. What that means is I was forced to be that mom and dad for myself. I was forced to reparent myself. And because of that, I had a lot of good experience to where when Vantka started her journey with me, actually, helping her reparent her child was actually not that hard. And she actually grew a lot. So for a lot of people listening, especially, the big thing is that in the bigger picture is that you guys are constantly especially if you're both on a conscious journey, working on yourselves. Okay, that is a big, big thing. If you're not working on yourselves, you will continually project whatever is surfacing onto your significant other, because the person you're most attached to, you'll project onto the most. Period.
Mm.
Right. So knowing this, knowing this, I would definitely look out for the ways I was projecting. Right. And if you get good, most people when they project, they experience the fear, they experience sadness, desire, they act it out, and then maybe they act it out for a whole hour. They get in a whole hour fight, and then after the fact, they look back. They're like, you know what? I might have projected. I might have projected. Maybe that angry thing I said was really about me. Okay. But so that's fine. And as you work on learning a lot of skills, or even just like being more mindful, being more present, slowing things down, you can notice your projection before you act it out. Right. So, and because everybody projects still, but the key is if you notice it before you act it out, you don't hurt anybody. You realize, oh, well, like sometimes I'll catch myself. I'm like, you know what? I went through something inconvenient, and I almost went and blamed Bontica. I was like, well, she's not even here. Like I catch myself right away. Like, oh, she has nothing to do with that. This is me. And you catch it, and then that's good. So know when you're going to project, expecting it. Don't be so egotistical and think you're always right. You're already going to project. But if you get good at owning up to it, you can catch it before you act it out. Okay. Some people don't think I project because I'm so good at catching it. Right. So that's the big picture is you have to work through your patterns. You got to be, that's the healthiest one is not that it's healthy when it starts. It's that you are constantly getting healthier and healthier over time. That is the key. Okay. I will say this practical tip, super practical. I learned this early on, is when you're having a discussion or some kind of fight argument, you need to remember it is two conversations going on. right? What that means is there's a logical conversation and emotional conversation. A lot of times the guy will talk logically and the girl will talk emotionally. The guy will try to explain why what he's doing makes sense and why he doesn't understand what she's doing, what she's saying. And then she is actually not that good at logical conversation. So she is actually doing really bad at the logical conversation. She almost seems illogical, but she's just struggling to communicate that, and she's trying to express and feeling that she can't express very well. And that since that guy is focusing on the logic, he can't see that. He just keeps focusing on logic, and there's no connection, right? So if you know there's always two conversations, if you're a guy, for example, well, at this point I should know that this is not a logical thing anymore. Even if I'm right and I tell her I'm right and she knows I'm right, she's not gonna feel better. She's gonna be mad, or we're gonna be mad or whatever. I need to know there's an emotional thing going on, right? So maybe it's not about this or that. It's about this emotion of this. Maybe it's accumulation of something, the ongoing relationship, or maybe it's something the past surfacing. But understanding that is how you actually resolve the conflict. When you realize it's not about the logical thing we're talking about, there's an emotional thing going on. I need to address that. If I don't address that, she's not going to feel heard. They're not going to feel, there's going to be lack of connection and there's no understanding. Right. So I think it's the best practical thing is there's two conversations going on. A lot of it, that was my mistake early on in my first relationship. I would just try to talk about the logic and there's no connection. There's no understanding. I was like, I thought they were just being super illogical. It didn't make sense to me. Like, why are you doing this? It doesn't make sense. And then on her side, she probably felt like I was invalidating. She probably felt like I was whatever, right? Not understanding, no connection, whatever. So that's the most practical thing I think early on. A lot of couples, they really struggle to resolve conflicts, and a lot of their problems they experience are just an accumulation of a long-standing conflict that was not resolved. That keeps happening again and again and again. It gets worse and worse. And they get more and more bitter, more passive aggressive every time it happens again. Right. So actually understanding how to resolve the conflict, as well as actually working through your patterns. I think those two steps alone make a very fulfilling relationship. Truly.
Yeah, I'm learning all of this a little bit as I go, but yeah, definitely noticing when you're about to project onto your partner, I think is really um, important, because I, yeah, just looking through all my relationships as well, like you definitely can have moments where you're letting anger or something that is not related to your partner and the way that you're feeling about that you can then bring into the relationship. And I'm definitely also very logical, where I'm like, um but this, and it's like if you stick in on logic and you're trying to like repeat yourself logically, like I do think you can invalidate the emotional side of things. And so I'm also learning to try to be more emotionally intelligent and able to like hear that and communicate that better. Yeah, I'm doing my best, but it's definitely, I think one of the biggest like challenges that I've faced on this journey is like it's one thing to be responsible for yourself, which is something that I've always been very comfortable like on my own journey, um, starting a business, doing my own thing, like being like responsible for the reality that I create and being accountable for my actions. And then being in a relationship is like kind of a new, it's very difficult because you're now like you also want to be responsible for that person, you want to be like you don't want to let your patterns hurt them. And so if you become aware that your patterns are hurting them, then it's kind of like a call for you to work on yourself and to better yourself. And yeah.
No, you're right. Especially think about this. So now you've probably heard this idea that the people around you pretty much always mirror you in some way. They always something to show you about yourself. In a romantic relationship, this is always the case. In fact, it's almost like they are showing you your most direct opposite of whatever pattern you're going through. Okay. So this is also why oftentimes people stay in toxic relationships, because the person that they're with, they'll feel like they're toxic, whatever, they're going through stuff, but they have this kind of sympathy. They feel bad for them. And that sympathy is actually a projection of their own version of their self that's mirrored by them, the other person. That they have a toxic version inside of themselves that they need to take all this love that they have for the other person and redirect it toward themselves to where they can finally see things clearly, right? The more they reject that version of themselves, their shadow, and that's mirrored through their other person in a relationship, the more likely they will feel like it's more exciting or more urgent to help the other person. It will create this distortion where you're not doing it from a place of peace. It's fear-based now, where I need to be with them to help them, whatever, blah, blah. That's one example, right? But the shadow thing is very important. So I told you before, how you have to be able to work through conflicts, the projections and stuff. You gotta be able to work through your own patterns. It's actually a cheat code in a way. When you're with someone in a romantic relationship, you will get glimpses into your own patterns. And a lot of times, for example, a lot of times people will show you almost, it'll seem like a more extreme version of you in a way. It's not actually, but it'll seem like it. And what that means, for example, is you have something that's going on in yourself and you're not noticing, you're not seeing it. You will see it easier in a romantic partner than yourself. And not just because it's easy, maybe not just because you're projecting or anything like that, but because they will probably be a perfect mirror of your blind spots. So you guys will actually know this. And if you guys both know this and work together, you can actually work through your patterns even faster, which is actually the most beautiful part. Is that for me, after my first relationship, I was working the patterns on my own, and it felt like it was just me doing it and carrying the team, and the person that was just taking care of them, right? And I didn't realize that I could be with someone where I would actually work through my patterns faster. You would actually help me in ways that I didn't know anyone could help me. I thought I had to do it myself.
Yeah.
Right. So that's also a big thing as well. If you guys can work as a team to break your patterns, it's actually very, very, very powerful. The synergy is very powerful. Even the bond you form is really, truly unbreakable. It's something you will never be able to replace with other people around you. I mean, you probably could in some of the ways if they're not the right person for you, but you get what I'm saying. If you had some kind of fear-based pattern come up where you're attached to women and you seek them out, it wouldn't last very long because your bond with that person is so strong.
Gotcha.
Right. And it actually helps you work through your own patterns. So really beautiful, honestly.
Yeah. And what is some effective forms of like conflict resolution that you and your partner use when you're not seeing eye to eye and you're trying to, yeah, both be logical and also emotionally receptive and, yeah, like work because sometimes in a relationship, I think you get in these really heavy spaces where you're facing parts of yourself that you haven't healed, your wounded inner
Mm-hmm.
child's coming out. And it can feel like, yeah, like you're in a very dark place, but you know how you feel about the other person still. Like that hasn't changed. How do you then like communicate effectively in such a way that you work through all that emotions from a place of respect and love, and then get back to, yeah, being a team and enjoying the all the positive sides of the relationship?
Okay, great question, loaded question. So, let's see. So, like I said before, it all coincides with breaking patterns. So, at the end of the day, if you break the pattern, you guys will be chill. You guys will love each other even more. You release your attachments to each other, and you realize you love each other even more than your attachment said you did. Okay, so there's that. Now let's say, practically speaking. So, as far as breaking patterns go, whenever conflicts happen in relationships, they kind of follow these kind of common patterns or stages. Okay. We'll start with the one that's probably the most important is when it becomes the project. We'll call it the projection, okay? And it's not just projection. There's like light projection where it's like, oh, I said something, oops, I projected, sorry. There is the one where you keep, when you're like almost, you want to keep replying, you want to keep talking. It's not really getting better. You're both just talking and you're expressing yourself. So you're almost like arguing with yourselves through each other, right? You know that point. For a lot of people, they know that point, right? For me, whenever it gets to a point where I feel like there's no longer healthy communication, I force space. I just say, hey, politely, like, I think projection is going on here. I think we should just take space, and I'll even force it. If she doesn't want it, I'll force it. Or if I feel like I need it, then I'll force it for myself. The reason being is because if there's projection going on, okay, and especially if there's anger coming out, it's coming out. The reason they are fixating on you is because you are the only person who they could successfully project it onto and suppress it again. Okay, because they're very, very attached to you. That's why it's coming out. something about your relationship with them triggered that, or with you triggered you. And so it's going to come out, you're going to project. Okay. If you force space, what happens is now that they can no longer project onto you as effectively, what they're projecting outwards will come back to them right away, instantaneously. So oftentimes I'll create space, and a few minutes later or something, they're crying or something, and they're realizing what they're projecting outwards, and then they're more at peace and there's more understanding, and you can kind of realize, oh well, I wasn't fighting about this blah, blah blah logical thing. It was, I really felt this way, blah blah blah. Okay, so first you gotta get past that initial projection arguments phase. Okay, create space, people calm down, whatever they're projecting outwards, they need to own up to that, both people, right? It's most of the time it will be both people, right? It'll be this very synchronistic thing oftentimes. Maybe what someone is saying isn't wrong, but the situation that happened, it triggered them, and that's okay. Or maybe sometimes what I was actually said is triggering, and that's fine as well. It can vary, but both people are probably projecting something. Either they're projecting a past memory that caused them to feel very afraid and scared, or they're projecting their reaction of a past memory and they're reacting in a certain way. They're saying something to you that's not for you, it's really for their ex. It's how they felt when their last relationship, and they're projecting that onto you or something, right? So that can happen. So first, get past the first projection stage. Okay. Second, remember, it's an emotional thing, and it's actually emotional for both people probably.
Yeah.
So they need to be honest about what their emotions really are. Okay. If we don't have vulnerability, if we're scared to share our true feelings, there's no understanding, there's no connection, right? So it's not like, I don't want you to talk to her, blah, blah, blah. It's like, honestly, I just feel insecure because blah, 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 blah. Right. And so, because if you fixate, if the conversation was for, it's like a common what relationship issue in generic relationships is always talking to a girl, blah, blah, I'm jealous, whatever. So the simple example is, if you can just communicate what you're insecure about, then also, because if you fix it on the actual act of you need to follow that girl, block her, whatever thing people do, right? Then that guy's going to feel invalidated himself, that now he's being controlled and trapped, right? So if you just tell them insecurity, see, ideally, in an ideal situation, if they both work through their stuff, then the girl in that situation, the girl would tell her insecurities, and the guy, although he wouldn't necessarily just stop doing everything, listening to her, he would at least consider her feelings and not do things purposely to make her insecure, right? A very simple thing. But it requires both people to work through their patterns and be vulnerable about their true feelings, right? And then the last thing, though, is that if people are just unwilling to be present with what they're projecting, no relationship will work for them, period. Okay, if people are just not going to work through their patterns and they're not going to be present with what's projecting outwards, there's really no resolving the conflict for them. Yeah. And there's nothing you can do at that, but you can try to help them. You can force space. Like I said, if you force space, they can just kind of break down, and then they can't project anymore. That's one thing you can try. At the end of the day, you can't force this to work. If someone's just continually projecting outwards, you even tell them politely, lovingly, like, hey, I'm trying to create a safe space here. I love you, want to work through this, blah, blah, blah. But you're still projecting. I don't think it's healthy conversation is possible. And they still want to choose to do that. You can't do much about that, honestly.
Yeah. And I find it difficult, like, in terms of creating space. Like, it's really hard for me, if I'm in a relationship and I feel like there is some misunderstandings where, like, I am saying one thing and it's like a totally different thing is being heard, and then I'm being kind of like characterized in a certain way that isn't really like, yeah, my true intention. It's also very difficult for me to resist the urge of, like, when someone is really hurting that I care about, to not try to be there as present as possible. And I think sometimes when projection occurs and you don't create space, and you can almost feed the projection and almost like lose sight of yourself and gaslight yourself and kind of become confused by and like drawn out of your own energy sometimes, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. But that would be an example of, so for example, in order to create healthy space, you also cannot be triggered by their projection.
Yeah.
If you're triggered by their projection, so that's why I said, even if what they're doing is, even if they're saying is a projection, that's fine. Maybe the way they're projecting onto you can remind you of some family issue in the past when you got projected upon. and you felt like a powerless child. Your parents invalidated your feelings or something like that. And that may trigger you. You may feel almost flustered, and you won't be able to create safe space there. You're not safe yourself, right? A simple example. So it's actually very, if you're not triggered, it's actually very simple. And that, like, if you know they're projecting, it's like, you know that something's going on. You're like, hey, like, let's just breathe for a second. Breathing is a good step because it means you're present with anxiety. So let's just breathe. Let's just, okay. Either if you don't understand what's going on, ask them, but try to ask them about their feelings, right? I try to ask them what their issue is, but mainly what their emotional issue is. Because I promise you, the thing they're actually fixating on is not necessarily the issue most of the time. If it's projection, okay. And then if you're going to talk about stuff to try to disperse the confusion, maybe they claim you're doing something. You can still defend yourself. Like, hey, that's not true, right? If they're claiming you're doing something you're not doing, you can still defend yourself. But remember, if you fixate on logic only, it can feel dismissive. It's not that you are invalidating them. It can feel that way to them. It's because they are attaching their emotions to some kind of physical outcome. And if you deny that outcome, they'll feel like their feelings are invalidated. So what you can do, you address both. You say something like, hey, it's okay that you feel that way. Okay. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I was doing this, blah, blah. So in a way, you're still defending yourself, removing the illusion or whatever projection they created, and you're still acknowledging their feelings so they don't have to feel afraid. If you don't acknowledge their feelings and you deny the outcome that they're attaching their feelings to, they'll feel like you're denying their feelings. Make sense?
Yeah. And last question, what is the best way, like, for you to tell when you're projecting, like, before you do, what's a good rule of thumb for catching yourself and kind of, yeah, holding yourself accountable to not projecting onto your partner? And yeah.
That's a good point, because projection actually happens. It's very, very common. Okay. You can say projection is any time. So if we define it like this, we'll define it as any moment that you have an internal issue and you fixate on your external reality, or you blame your external reality for an internal issue, that is projection. Okay. Now, as far as catching it goes, I'll say the easiest example is if you're yelling something angrily, it's just something triggers you and your anger comes out. You're yelling angrily. I promise you that's it for you. That is between you and you. Whatever you're yelling, it's very valid. The anger is very valid, but that anger is between you and you. Whatever you said out loud is because that's how some part of you feels about the way you treat yourself. That makes sense. So if you catch it, if you're anytime you're yelling something very angrily, it's probably a projection. That's someone else like that. Especially if you get triggered suddenly. It's if you get triggered and you react right away, it's pretty much always a projection. Yeah, if you can't react peacefully, if you can't just act, not react peacefully, act peacefully, then from place of stillness, or even if you're frustrated, that's fine. But if you're just yelling angry, it's the number one sign of projecting. Okay. Two, on the layered, so that's the easiest example. Deeper than that, though, more subtle, is when you notice that you are trying. So I remember I told you an internal issue, an external reality. Let's go even further and make it easier. Is that if you notice you are blaming your feelings, the way you feel, on them, you are projecting. Okay. Now that being said, it doesn't mean, oh, he cheated on me, I can't feel sad about that. No, you can definitely feel sad about that. Okay. That's not what it means. What it means is that let's take that example. For example, if they did cheat on you and you did feel sad, obviously you don't want to be with them anymore. That's fine. That's logical. That makes sense. But if you are saying, I feel insecure in like shit because he did that, that's projection. Okay. You felt like that way before you met him, and you became attached to him to suppress that insecurity. And then when he cheated on you, it triggered your attachment and insecurity came back up. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. But to catch the insecurity, it's whenever you try to project your emotions, you're basically blaming your emotions on your external reality. That is projection. Okay. So I guess this is a good topic. Right. One of the last ones about relationships is that the important thing is that guys don't make each other happy. Okay. Yeah. You help each other create your own happiness and you share the happiness together. You don't make each other happy. When you believe you make someone happy, you also believe you make them sad, and vice versa. So say you believe you make someone happy. That means that when they're sad, you feel like you're a bad person. You feel like you're doing something wrong when they could just be going through something that's surfacing and it has nothing to do with you. You could feel like it's your fault, or if they, or and think about that. If you feel like you make someone happy, and then they even tell you that what you're doing is making them sad, you'll believe it, and you'll go along with the projection. And vice versa. If someone believes that, if you believe that, what did I say? If you believe you make someone happy, if someone believes that they make you happy, or you believe someone makes you happy, then yeah, if you believe someone makes you happy, then when you feel sad, you're gonna blame them too, right? Because you blame them for you making you happy. Whenever something surfaces, what and you feel sad, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do the very thing you did the first time, which is blame them for the way you feel. And so now you're gonna be like, oh, I'm on my period. I feel sad. It's your fault. You're not treating me, or even actually, all attachments work like this. Like if you form an attachment-based relationship, okay, you're suppressing them. You're suppressing your insecurities with them. That attachment will not last forever. And when it stops working, you will feel insecure, just like you did before. You will blame them. So it's very ironic. It's like you'll say, for example, you date someone who's super hot and you feel like, wow, I'm so fucking hot. I'm so attractive because they like me. After how many years, months, you will feel like it's not enough. You'll feel like they're boring, they're not attractive, and you'll want another girl. And it's not because of them or anything. It's because your attachment wore out. You were using them to feel good about yourself. Now that's no longer working. Your pattern activates again, and you need to find someone new to fill the void.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's knowing that as well. Attachment-based relationships, the attachments will run out. You will project and get triggered, whatever, and then you got to work through the attachment yourself. You can work together. You can work like you work through it together, but you need to work through your attachment. Period.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a balance with what you're saying of projection and accountability, because like I think when you it's easy with projection. I think the topic of projection to try to avoid accountability for the way that you like your actions affect someone else, where like you can't I don't think like if you do something that is not with integrity, and
Mm-hmm.
is hurtful to the other person, I think being dismissive and saying that the way they feel interacting is now just a projection, like I think that can be very dismissive. But then I do think conversation in terms of resolving like conflict, I think it helps to remove the story from the feeling, like
Mm-hmm.
to talk about like yeah how you are feeling without needing a story, just like how
Exactly.
yeah, all right.
You're right. Because actually, it's funny. You're exactly right in that someone will listen to this, and they'll start using the word projection in their relationship in a dismissive way.
Yeah.
Right. So what you said is perfect, and we fix it because people will use it as in what you're saying about me is wrong. It's about you. That can be dismissive or whatever. It's really about what you said. The way we project that actually creates distortions is we tie emotions to the story. So let's just talk about our feelings and express them without tying it to a story, without labeling it. And you realize the emotions actually are not just about that story. It's about something else as well, something deeper, right? And if you're tying all those emotions to that one story, you'll think that the really story, you'll think that person is just doing something terrible to you. Or then if you remove it, you'll realize they're just doing whatever. Maybe they had some room for improvement. That's fine, and they can still apologize, hold themselves accountable. But it wasn't so terrible. And then there's something else going on in your childhood or something coming up that was really the pain. That's where the pain was coming from. Right. So what you said is perfect, actually. So anyone watching this, yeah, don't get a little ego trip here. Like, oh, you know what? You're projected, because I promise you, but it's so funny. People learn the word project and then they kind of go crazy with it after a while too. So that is true as well.
No, it's a license. I'm gonna do anything. Stop projecting on me. uh, um, I think this is the perfect place to call it, honestly. But thank you so much for coming on, Brian. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I learned something.
That was great. Thanks for having me. We were definitely going back and forth. We had to remember what we were saying. Like we had to I had to write notes for a second and stuff. So that's a good sign of a good conversation, honestly.
Yeah, if you can go to government to aliens back to relationships in an hour, I think that's a
Yeah,
conversation.
we got all the bases covered.
All right, awesome. Have a great one, man.
Yeah, you too.